When one places themselves in a quiet place, they are inexplicably drawn deep within themselves. It may be in that stillness that lies the entrance to the wisdom sought by people since ancient times. The Zen that has captivated great figures around the world is precisely the technique of facing that silence. Zen is a religion, yet it is also referred to as a science of the spirit that transcends religious boundaries. Rather than believing, one observes. Rather than relying, one becomes aware. This very attitude embodies the essence of Zen. Why were Harari, Steve Jobs, the Dalai Lama, and the samurai fascinated by Zen? It is deeply connected to the common structure of the mind that transcends time and position. No matter how brilliant or powerful one may be, humans are creatures tossed about by their thoughts. Zen presented a very simple yet powerful method of quietly observing the waves of fluctuating thoughts. It is a path to reach the essence by stripping away complexity. This is why great figures were drawn to it. The background of Zen's birth lies in the process of Shakyamuni's enlightenment. Shakyamuni did not deny the outer world, but thoroughly examined the causes of suffering within himself. The person who further refined that attitude and systematized it in the form of Zazen was Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma emphasized awareness as an experience rather than teachings through words. The phrase, "not relying on words," he left behind means that truth cannot be fixed in letters or words. This way of thinking greatly influenced later philosophers and scientists. Because no matter how excellent a theory may be, it cannot reach the essence without accompanying experience. Zen was a path to understand the workings of the mind through awareness rather than knowledge. And that path resonated with the fundamental questions many great figures faced in life and work. Who am I? Why do I feel anxious? Which choice is essential? In response to these questions, Zen does not provide answers, but creates a space for self-awareness. In particular, the attitude of objectively observing one's own thoughts connects to modern psychology and neuroscience. Rather than stopping the runaway thoughts, one simply observes. Just that allows the mind to naturally regain calmness. This technique of observing is also a point emphasized by Harari in Vipassana meditation. He spoke of how modern people, living in a flood of information, should gaze at their own hearts in silence. While one cannot stop the clamor of the outside world, they can organize their inner self. Zen has become the spiritual foundation for many great figures as a technique for handling one's own mind. Its quiet yet strong power remains unshaken even in today's technologically advanced world. Rather, it is precisely because information has become overwhelming that the teachings of Zen are increasingly needed. And from here, let us slowly step into the core of Zen. At the core of Zen lies the attitude of not stopping thought, but rather distancing oneself from it. We often believe that the thoughts that arise are our true selves. However, Zen encourages us to regain the position of an observer who simply observes those thoughts. This is akin to being in a noisy station while your mind is in a quiet library. You can change the volume inside without altering the external noise. The reason Master Damo sat facing the wall was to block out the outside and observe the inner self. The wall served as a symbolic boundary, cutting off the external world. In front of that wall, Damo explored how the human mind sways and how it can become still. The result of that exploration birthed Zen's experientialism. Not theory, but practice. Not explanation, but silence. This was the method of Zen transmission. This method of silent transmission later deeply influenced the philosophies of Harari and Jobs. Harari described the 10 days of Vipassana silence as the moment freed from the domination of thought. The restriction of not speaking created a forced environment to cut off external information. In that silence, he realized how restless his mind continued to be. Jobs, too, felt the great space behind thought through quiet sitting in a Zen temple. From that space, he generated innovative designs and ideas. Jobs's philosophy of leaving only the essence was truly the spirit of Zen. The attitude of thoroughly removing waste from products shares the same root as the Zen practice of clearing the mind of distractions. Zen elevated stripping away to an aesthetic. And that aesthetic is deeply engraved not only in Jobs' life, but also in Apple's corporate culture. On the other hand, the teachings of the Dalai Lama harmonize Zen's emptiness and compassion. He positioned meditation as a form of mental training, adding the dimension of compassion. Compassion is caring for others, but in Zen, its source is sought within oneself. When one can observe the fluctuations of their own mind, they naturally empathize with the pain of others. Zen is a practice for the individual, yet it ultimately cultivates kindness towards others. The reason the Dalai Lama is loved worldwide is that his words are quiet and profound. That depth arises from the clarity of mind honed through years of meditation and introspection. A clear mind sees the essence of things well because it is unclouded. It is no coincidence that great figures from different realms like Harari, Jobs, and the Dalai Lama walk paths that lead to Zen. They all face the common enemies of thought, anxiety, and conflict, finding answers in silence. One reason Zen attracts great figures is its sharpness in seeing the essence of the mind. The more one thinks, the deeper the confusion can become. No matter how much information one gathers, anxiety may persist. This is because the cause lies not in the outer world, but in the inner turmoil. Zen serves as a mirror to help one notice that turmoil. It's not about what you acquire, but what you become aware of. It's not about what you accumulate, but what you let go of. This shift in values is the fundamental reason why great figures resonated deeply with Zen. Especially the samurai found great allure in Zen's no mind. In life and death battles, distractions are the most hindering. Fear, anxiety, anger, and confusion dull judgment and can determine life or death. Thus, samurai adopted Zen as a technique to calm their minds. In Miyamoto Musashi's Book of Five Rings, there are many thoughts that resonate with Zen. In the Scroll of Emptiness, a state beyond all forms is described. Musashi understood that the state of the mind influences the outcome more than techniques to win. The movement of the mind had far greater impact than the way of wielding a sword. This way of thinking resonates with modern top athletes. Too much concentration can make one rigid, and overthinking can hinder movement. Samurai knew that the best performance arises from natural no mind. Therefore, Zen became deeply intertwined with the philosophy of combat. However, Zen's influence on Bushido was not limited to the battlefield. In daily actions, etiquette, views on life and death, and aesthetic sense, Zen's tranquility flowed into all. The samurai culture, which values simplicity and dislikes excessive decoration, embodies Zen aesthetics. Zen also influenced the spirit of tea ceremony, giving rise to the concept of Ichigo Ichi. The attitude of cherishing a once-in-a-lifetime moment aligns with Zen's idea of living mindfully in the present. Behind the great figure's attraction to Zen lies this power to return to the now. Not regrets about the past or anxieties about the future, but simply focusing on the present. This simple attitude quietly calms a troubled mind. Jobs repeatedly took deep breaths before presentations to center himself for the same reason. Harari's ability to remain calm while handling vast information also stems from this. The Dalai Lama's constant gentle smile is because his mind is rooted in the now. They understood Zen not as a special religion, but as a technique of the mind for living. And this technique continues to exert great power across eras and cultures. The power of awareness that Zen demonstrates becomes increasingly sought after as the chaos of the times deepens. As the world becomes more complex, people tend to drift further away from their essence. Simply increasing information does not enrich the mind. Rather, an overload of information stimulates anxiety and impatience, making the mind more unsettled. The background of why great figures were drawn to Zen lies in this quiet resistance to chaos. While they sought great achievements, they also grappled with inner conflicts. The more successful they became, the more complex their minds grew. Harari, after the success of his global bestseller, found himself nearly overwhelmed by his own thoughts. What supported him at that time was the quiet technique of meditation. Instead of calming thoughts, he distanced himself from them. That distance became a safe zone to remain calm amidst chaos. Jobs also experienced a period of emotional turmoil between business success and chaos. Even during the harsh times of being ousted from Apple and starting next, he maintained his seated meditation posture and kept his inner center intact. Jobs' unwavering judgment stemmed not from strength but from calmness. That calmness continued to protect his innovative ideas. The Dalai Lama experienced profound suffering through exile. Losing his country and being driven from his homeland, it was not easy to continue speaking of hope. Yet, he continued to create a wide space in his heart through meditation. That space was a safeguard against turning suffering into hatred. Zen does not have the power to change the events themselves. However, it possesses the power to change how we perceive those events. Harari, Jobs, and the Dalai Lama deeply understood that power. Even if the outer world does not go as one wishes, the inner world can be organized. When the inner world is organized, the outer scenery can appear to change as well. What Zen teaches is to change one's perspective before attempting to change the world. This quiet and modest teaching, however, brings about the most profound changes. Behind the words, works, and thoughts left by great figures, this philosophy of calmness always flows. That is why Zen has supported their spirits across the ages. One more reason Zen resonates with great minds is its unique stance of not providing answers. Many philosophies and religions attempt to offer answers to life. However, Zen teaches us how to handle questions rather than providing answers. Letting go of questions, not being trapped by them, and observing how questions arise. This gentle attitude becomes the key to regaining freedom of thought. Harari stated, "Humanity is a creature that believes in stories." He pointed out that nations, money, and religions are mostly fictions created by humanity. To avoid getting lost in those fictions, one must reflect on the movements of their own heart. What Zen offers is that perspective of the observer. When creating products, Jobs observed not only user behavior, but also mental habits, where people get lost, hesitate, and feel comfort. This was the same philosophy as Zen's emphasis on insight into the movements of the heart. His aesthetic of stripping away the unnecessary and leaving only the essence had the same structure as the Zen practice of observing the inner self. the Dalai Lama eased the self-centeredness that binds the heart through the teachings of compassion. The Zen concept of emptiness has the power to gently expand the boundary of self. When the self becomes rigid, suffering also becomes rigid. When the self expands, suffering melts away. The emptiness that Zen teaches is not mere nothingness, but a state of mind where boundaries soften. Great minds found freedom within that softness. Freedom is not about acting as one pleases. Freedom is not being controlled by one's thoughts and emotions. Zen showed the path to attain that inner freedom. No matter how harsh the external circumstances, the freedom of the heart cannot be taken away. Conversely, no matter how blessed the situation, if the heart is unfree, suffering continues. Great minds understood that this freedom of the heart determines the quality of life. That is why they turned to Zen. What Zen provides is not strength, but softness. It is not the power to push back, but the power to embrace. It is not about increasing fixed ideas, but the power to unravel them. This power deeply influenced the thoughts and actions of those who changed the world. And this power similarly reaches out to us living in the modern age. The freedom of the mind that Zen shows is not just a mental concept. It is also a practical power that greatly changes the quality of actions and judgments. When the mind is rigid, future possibilities become rigid as well. When the mind is flexible, new paths emerge in any situation. Great figures have used that flexibility as a weapon to overcome difficulties. Harari has continued to observe humanity's weaknesses and potentials from a historical perspective. The deep-rooted problems humanity faces: conflict, prejudice, loneliness, anxiety. He speaks of the need to understand the nature of one's own mind to confront these issues. For him, meditation and Zen-like introspection were means to deepen that understanding. Jobs valued white space to see things without being bound by common sense. White space is the choice not to cram in information. Not overthinking, not overburdening, not rushing. That white space nurtured new buds of creativity. The Dalai Lama has continuously conveyed ways to quietly extinguish the fire of anger in the human heart. It's not about suppressing anger, but understanding its true nature. That understanding forms the foundation for dialogue and peace in the world. Zen is a very gentle technique to directly touch the anxieties and anger that dwell in the human heart. Gentle yet strong. Quiet yet profound. Invisible yet powerful enough to change the direction of life itself. Great figures prioritized inner growth over outer achievements. As a result, they were able to realize greater achievements in the outer world. When the inner world is in order, the outer world naturally falls into place. The power to see the essence that Zen has conveyed is indispensable in any era. As busyness and confusion increase, the essence becomes obscured. However, Zen shows us a way to notice the light, no matter how cloudy it is. It's not a method that requires special talent. Anyone, anywhere can start this quiet practice from today. This gentle practice quietly thrived behind the thoughts and actions of great figures. And the wisdom of Zen still gently accompanies our hearts. One reason Zen continues to be loved by great figures around the world is that, through stillness, the way we see the world changes. We often tend to believe that our perspective is the correct one. However, Zen makes us realize that perspectives themselves can be unstable. This realization becomes the soil for new ideas and values. Harari re-examined history as the story of humanity as a whole. He sought to understand the world from a broader perspective, transcending borders and religious differences. This wide perspective is not unrelated to the mental overview he cultivated through meditation. The practice of quietly observing the mind leads to a quiet observation of the world. Jobs valued the Chushin no Mu, or beginner's mind, to break preconceived notions. Beginner's mind means seeing things with clear eyes. This aligns perfectly with what Zen cherishes as Chufa no Shin, or original mind. When we lose our original mind, creativity withers away. Great works are born from a heart that questions common sense and regains purity. The Dalai Lama has repeatedly stated that peace of mind is the foundation of world peace. He teaches that it is understanding and compassion that connect the world, not anger and hatred. There is deep Zen insight behind this teaching. Zen fosters the attitude of seeing the essence of being human before focusing on differences. This attitude is the first step to transcending conflict. Great figures did not see Zen merely as a spiritual practice. For them, Zen was a quiet lens to decipher life's problems. When the lens is cloudy, the world appears cloudy. When the lens is clear, the world appears clear. Zen is a method to continuously polish that lens. The busier we are, the more we need stillness. The more we are lost, the more silence leads us to answers. When we think and think without finding answers, Zen provides us with time to not think. In that time, the true answers buried deep in our hearts may surface. Great figures did not only chase external success, they sustained success by maintaining inner stillness. Zen was not a technique for success, but a technique to avoid being consumed by success. And this technique gives us, living in modern times, the same great power. The Dalai Lama taught that true compassion grows in stillness. From a noisy mind, kindness does not arise. Only from a quiet mind does deep understanding and warmth overflow. Great figures all knew this, abundance nurtured by stillness. One of the essences conveyed by Zen is the attitude of living in the now. Regretting the past or worrying about the future exhausts the human heart. However, Zen values the state of being here and now, where the mind does not wander to the past or future. Here and now is not a point in flowing time, but the place where the mind is most free. Harari escaped the confusion of thought by grasping this sensation in meditation. Jobs intuitively understood that focusing on the now maximizes creativity. The Dalai Lama smiles gently, not sinking into past sorrow or being consumed by future anxiety. All great figures cultivated this mind that lives in the now. In the world of Zen, time is treated as a point rather than a line. When that point deepens, one lets go of unnecessary doubts and returns to their true self. When we are confused, it is often because our hearts are in a place that is not now. Zen is a technique to bring the mind back to the present. Just by returning, the mind is organized, judgment becomes clear, and actions become natural. Jobs favored Zen because he felt this naturalness was the source of creativity. Being natural does not mean to relax one's strength. Being natural means to exert maximum strength in a state of ease. In the samurai code, this natural state has been regarded as the strongest. In both battle and daily life, being natural was at the center of beauty and strength. Zen deeply rooted in the samurai code because these values overlapped. Harari's historical perspective also arises from a natural state of thought. Observing the human existence as it is, without excessive pessimism or optimism. This led to his global recognition. Zen cultivates an axis to return to the center without extreme swings. With an axis in the heart, no matter how the world shakes, one does not lose themselves. Great figures remained unshaken in difficult situations because they had this axis. When we are overwhelmed by daily anxieties, what we need is not new answers. What we need is quiet time to return to our center. Zen was a method to create that quiet time anywhere. The charm of Zen lies not in adding something, but rather in removing it. When we feel anxious, we seek new knowledge, new tools, and new answers. However, Zen encourages us to reduce the excess before searching for what is lacking. Letting go of the clutter and attachments in our minds creates clear thinking. Great figures already possessed many things: fame, wealth, recognition, and influence. Yet, these were also the weight of the heart. Jobs increasingly felt the need to return to essence as he achieved success. He understood that losing sight of essence leads to confusion, no matter how advanced technology becomes. Harari realized that constant exposure to vast knowledge risks turning knowledge itself into noise. Thus, he began to value time spent organizing thoughts over increasing information. Enlightenment is not about accumulating knowledge, but about the process of removing mental noise. Zen does not aim for perfection. Rather, it fosters an attitude of accepting imperfection as it is. The more we strive for perfection, the more suffering we endure. However, when we can observe our imperfect selves without blame, our minds quietly unravel. Zen cherishes this unraveling process. The Dalai Lama remains calm not because he is flawless. It is because he deeply understands and accepts his own imperfections. That kindness gives warmth to his words and resonates in people's hearts. Great figures chose the path of understanding themselves rather than blaming themselves. Understanding holds a far stronger and gentler power than blame. Zen provides a quiet place for that understanding. This place requires no teaching from others and no need to go anywhere. All you need to do is sit, breathe, and gaze into your own heart. This simplicity is why Zen continues to be loved worldwide. There is no need for flashy tools or complex theories. What is needed is quiet time and an observing attitude. Even amidst their busyness, great figures always secured this quiet time. They knew that if they lost time to organize their hearts, everything would eventually begin to crumble. Zen teaches that stillness is not merely a state of relaxation. It is a deep quality of awareness that changes how we perceive the world. In stillness, the outlines of things begin to appear more clearly. You can understand your emotions and the surrounding situation more accurately than before. This accuracy influenced the decision-making of great figures. It is said that Jobs made significant decisions in a state of stillness. Decisions mixed with anger or impatience inevitably become distorted. However, when the mind is clear, the path to choose naturally emerges. Zen is also a technique for honing the sensitivity behind judgment. Sensitivity is not an instantaneous intuition, but a quiet judgment born from deep understanding. Harari trained his ability to notice biases in his thinking through meditation. To be aware means to be able to correct. Those who cannot notice are often swayed by their thinking habits without realizing it. Zen was a method to visualize these thinking habits. The compassion shown by the Dalai Lama is never just emotional kindness. It is an attitude that can be called the science of the heart, based on deep insight. Behind anger lies anxiety, and behind anxiety lies a lack of understanding. As understanding deepens, anger naturally dissolves. The insights brought by Zen ease conflicts and enable dialogue. Great figures change the world not through power, but by deepening their understanding. Understanding is the quietest and strongest force that moves the world. Zen was mental training to cultivate that understanding. With a mind full of distractions, one cannot discern the truth. A calm mind reflects things like a clear mirror. When we are confused, the cause is not always external. In many cases, it is simply the mirror of the mind that is shaking. Zen gently polishes this mirror and restores stillness. Stillness breeds courage. Stillness breeds insight. Stillness breeds kindness. And stillness has guided great figures to their next steps. That step can significantly change the direction of life in important moments. One reason why great figures were drawn to Zen is its ability to quietly confront one's limits. When facing limits, feelings of anxiety and impatience often swell. However, Zen begins not by denying limits, but by accepting them. Through acceptance, the mind can finally discover the next path. After becoming acutely aware of his own mortality, Jobs understood Zen's teachings more deeply. The question of how to use limited time was always crucial for him. In facing that question, the tranquility of Zen became a great support. Choose only what is truly important. This philosophy is central to Zen. Harari did not shy away from confronting the weaknesses of the human mind. He calmly stated that conflicts arise because people believe in stories. Yet, this calmness was supported by a perspective of observation to avoid being overwhelmed by emotions. The practice that honed this perspective was meditation and a Zen-like attitude. The Dalai Lama taught not to avoid suffering, but to face its true nature. Facing suffering requires courage. However, the practice of Zen quietly nurtures that courage. As long as one turns away, suffering will change its form and pursue you. But the moment you confront it, suffering transforms into understanding. What Zen illustrates is the very mechanism of this transformation. Those who can face their limits become softer and stronger. Great figures did not deny their weaknesses. They continued to observe them. This attitude made their spirits resilient and enabled greater challenges. Zen is not a path for self-blame. It is a path for self-understanding. As understanding deepens, unnecessary battles diminish, leaving only the necessary ones. And a mind that can focus on those necessary battles develops. This method of organizing the mind is incredibly valuable for us living in the present. In an age where information and choices are overwhelming, the ability to choose what truly matters is essential. Zen is a quiet training to cultivate that power to choose. Accept limits, observe weaknesses, and organize the mind. This simple accumulation has deeply enriched the lives of great figures. Another value that Zen brings to great individuals is the power to enhance the quality of action. When the mind is settled, the focus embedded in a single action changes completely. Conversely, when the mind is scattered, no matter how hard one tries, only half of their strength can be exerted. Zen tunes the mind, the source of action, at a deep level. Jobs was able to demonstrate astonishing focus in product creation because his mind was clear. The attitude of removing the unnecessary and facing the essence was the Zen-like power to deeply engage in one thing. Harari meditates for several hours daily while writing, reducing the noise of thought before starting to write. That quiet preparation supported his clear writing. The Dalai Lama also engages in dialogue with people after aligning his mind through daily meditation. Kindness and compassion are not just emotions, they are a state that naturally overflows from a settled mind. Zen is also a very rational method of aligning the mind before action. Many people struggle to change their actions. But Zen teaches this: change your state of mind before changing your actions. When the mind changes, actions change naturally. And when actions change, results change too. Great individuals deeply understood this chain of mind, action, result. Jobs knew that he couldn't make sound judgments while harboring anger and confusion. That's why he made decisions in deep tranquility. Harari thoroughly organizes his thoughts to avoid drowning in information, continuously enhancing his insights. Those insights led to the ability to decipher the future. The Dalai Lama has given hope to many by cultivating a mind that is not overwhelmed by emotions. The Zen-like attitude shaped their work and messages themselves. Zen is not a method to strengthen the mind. It is a method to make the mind flexible. A flexible mind does not break under any difficulty. It doesn't break by not bending. It doesn't break by bending. The reason great individuals could overcome the rough waves of life was because of this flexibility. And that flexibility was nurtured through the quiet training of Zen. One of the profound benefits that Zen brings to great figures is the ability to see the essence of things. Essence is the core part that remains after all unnecessary elements have been removed. However, in daily life, this core often becomes obscured by a multitude of information and emotions. Zen is the quiet process of removing that covering. Harari focused on the fundamental nature of humanity rather than vast amounts of data when discussing human history. This sharpness stems from a willingness to look at the depths rather than just the surface of thought. It is truly a Zen-like seeing power. Jobs' essentialism shared the same direction. At a time when many companies found value in adding functions, he found value in reducing. He believed that by stripping away, the essence would emerge and beauty would reside there. This resonates with the Zen teaching of the aesthetics of emptiness. Emptiness is not about having nothing, but about having space. It is precisely because there is space that what is necessary stands out. The patterns in a Zen garden bring tranquility to the mind, thanks to this power of space. The Dalai Lama always focused on the essential goodness within people. He taught that beneath surface anger and suffering lies a desire to be understood and a longing for love. This perspective aligns with deep Zen insight: to see beyond the surface and to see the essence. Do not hate anger, but empathize with the pain behind it. This attitude melted the hearts of people around the world. Zen cultivates the power to see the unseen. This is not about intuition or spiritual talk, but a natural understanding brought about by the clarity of the heart. When the heart is clouded, things appear distorted. When the heart is clear, the contours of the world are seen more accurately. Great figures all sought this clarity of heart. They did not seek it because they were successful. They understood it was necessary for success. When the heart is clouded, judgment becomes dull. When the heart is shaken, actions also waver. Zen was the technique to gently wipe away this cloudiness and shaking. What remains after wiping away is the essence. And it is the essence that guides people to the right path. The main reason why great figures were captivated by Zen is that the path to essence was present there. The charm of Zen teachings also lies in not over-explaining. In today's world, everything is verbalized, explained, and categorized. However, Zen chooses the opposite path. It believes that the truth resides in the parts that cannot be explained with words. When explaining Apple products, Jobs emphasized experience over words. He understood well that no amount of detailed specifications could surpass the actual user experience. This is the same reason Zen advocates not relying on written words. Harari also chose stories over numbers when discussing history. He believed that universal human emotions and behavioral principles drive the world more than vast amounts of data. This also aligns with Zen's attitude of showing the essence. The Dalai Lama breaks down complex Buddhist theories and speaks in words that everyone can understand. Yet behind those words lies a deep tranquility born from years of meditation. This tranquility changes the quality of words and gently permeates the listener's heart. Zen removes the unnecessary, leaving only what truly needs to be conveyed. This simple expression resonates with us living in a complex era. We feel more secure with more information. However, in reality, too much information increases anxiety. Even if the amount of thinking increases, the quality of understanding does not necessarily improve. Zen teaches to enhance quality, reduce quantity, to know less but understand deeply, to possess less but cherish what is important, to speak less but feel quietly. Great figures were strongly attracted to this richness within scarcity. It is said that Jobs' commitment to thorough minimalism was greatly influenced by Zen. His office was astonishingly devoid of clutter, containing only what was truly necessary. Scarcity does not lead to inconvenience, but fosters concentration. When the space is organized, the mind also becomes organized. Harari mentioned that much of the confusion modern people face is due to information overload. That is why he reset his thoughts in silence and selectively focused on truly important issues. Zen provides the wisdom of choice to understand the world. The Dalai Lama taught that true compassion grows in stillness. From a noisy mind, kindness does not arise. Only from a quiet mind does deep understanding and warmth overflow. Great figures all knew this, abundance nurtured by stillness. One of the essences conveyed by Zen is the attitude of living in the now. Regretting the past or worrying about the future exhausts the human heart. However, Zen values the state of being here and now, where the mind does not wander to the past or future. Here and now is not a point in flowing time, but the place where the mind is most free. Harari escaped the confusion of thought by grasping this sensation in meditation. Jobs intuitively understood that focusing on the now maximizes creativity. The Dalai Lama smiles gently, not sinking into past sorrow or being consumed by future anxiety. All great figures cultivated this mind that lives in the now. In the world of Zen, time is treated as a point rather than a line. When that point deepens, one lets go of unnecessary doubts and returns to their true self. When we are confused, it is often because our hearts are in a place that is not now. Zen is a technique to bring the mind back to the present. Just by returning, the mind is organized, judgment becomes clear, and actions become natural. Jobs favored Zen because he felt this naturalness was the source of creativity. Being natural does not mean to relax one's strength. Being natural means to exert maximum strength in a state of ease. In the samurai code, this natural state has been regarded as the strongest. In both battle and daily life, being natural was at the center of beauty and strength. Zen deeply rooted in the samurai code because these values overlapped. Harari's historical perspective also arises from a natural state of thought, observing the human existence as it is, without excessive pessimism or optimism. This led to his global recognition. Zen cultivates an axis to return to the center without extreme swings. With an axis in the heart, no matter how the world shakes, one does not lose themselves. Great figures remained unshaken in difficult situations because they had this axis. When we are overwhelmed by daily anxieties, what we need is not new answers. What we need is quiet time to return to our center. Zen was a method to create that quiet time anywhere. And this method brings deep peace to our lives as we live in the present. Another reason Zen attracted great figures was its technique for lightening the heart. People carry many burdens in their hearts, even if they are not aware of it. Expectations, regrets, comparisons, anxieties, attachments, all of these weigh down the heart. With a heavy heart, one cannot see the world clearly. Zen was a practice to let go of those burdens one by one. Letting go is not giving up. Rather, it is a choice to be free. Harari sought a way of living unbound by the stories created by human society. To do this, one first needed to observe their thought patterns. Observing is also preparing to let go. As he approached the latter half of his life, Jobs spoke of the importance of being simple. He believed that being able to hold on to what is important is true richness rather than having much. This attitude embodies the beauty of simplicity that Zen values. The Dalai Lama also teaches that a lighter heart deepens compassion. By letting go of anger and fear, one can see both oneself and others with kindness. Zen teaches that lightness of heart and kindness are two sides of the same coin. When the heart is light, judgments become clearer. With a light heart, one can see others as allies rather than threats. A light heart naturally gives rise to courage for the future. Great figures lived while cherishing this lightness of heart. Harari, who speaks of humanity's challenges. Jobs, who changed the world, and the peace-seeking Dalai Lama. All accomplished great things with a light heart, not a heavy one. The lightness that Zen provides is not an escape. It is a lightness for facing challenges. It is a lightness for living with grace, kindness, and sure steps. This lightness guided great figures further along their paths. And this lightness can certainly be applied to our lives as well. When the heart is light, the world appears astonishingly vast. Zen quietly opens the door to that vastness. Among the influences of Zen on great figures is the way to face fear. Fear is a natural emotion that arises in everyone's heart. However, trying to avoid fear only strengthens its power. Zen adopts an attitude of simply observing fear without trying to eliminate it. By being observed, fear gradually loses its shape and weakens its power to dominate the mind. Jobs deeply embraced Zen teachings during the time he contemplated his own death. If today were the last day of my life, would I choose to act as I am now? This question was not to avoid fear, but to transcend it. Harari also maintained an attitude of observing fear when confronting the dark aspects of history. Discussing the repeated mistakes of humanity is never a pleasant task. However, to analyze calmly without being consumed by fear, a Zen perspective was essential. The Dalai Lama speaks of a desire to be understood that lies behind fear. By looking at that desire, anger and hostility soften and compassion grows. Zen is a technique that sheds light on the essence of fear rather than eliminating it. Gazing at fear also leads to understanding the deeper parts of oneself. Great figures carefully embraced fear to avoid being dominated by it. As a result, their actions became freer, their judgments clearer, and their minds stronger. They did not eliminate fear, but changed their relationship with it. Zen teaches that when the state of the mind changes, so does the perception of the world. When fear is great, the world appears narrow and dark. When fear calms, the world appears wide and bright. The reason great figures could make significant decisions was not because they lacked fear. It was because they did not let fear cloud their minds. Zen was a quiet method to clear that cloudiness. This method is open to anyone. All it takes is to sit quietly, breathe, and watch over your own heart. That small act becomes the first step to transcending fear. One reason why great figures were captivated by Zen is that it allows them to regain freedom of the mind. To have a free mind means not being swayed by external circumstances. To succeed without arrogance, and to fail without despair. This sense of moderation lies at the core of the spirit that Zen emphasizes. Jobs maintained his beliefs with the same attitude, whether criticized or praised. Behind this was an inner strength that did not depend on external evaluations. Harari continued his research and meditation calmly, even under the world's spotlight. His life was remarkably simple, prioritizing inner peace over external stimuli. The Dalai Lama did not lose his smile even when exiled from his country. He knew that even if external freedom was taken away, inner freedom could not be taken from him. Zen offers us the perspective that it is the mind, not the environment, that determines freedom. Feeling bound by busyness is due to the mind being constrained, not time. Feeling trapped by anxiety is because the mind is imprisoned, not the future. Zen was a method to quietly untie these chains of the mind. When the mind is free, choices change. A free mind can act out of hope rather than fear. A free mind sees others as allies, not enemies. A free mind begins to perceive challenges as possibilities, not threats. The lives of great figures were bold and sometimes revolutionary because of this freedom of the mind. Jobs continued to question common sense because he had a free mind. Harari could speak boldly about the future because he was not consumed by people's fears. The Dalai Lama continued to choose dialogue over conflict because his mind was not dominated by fear. Zen is said to be the closest path to freedom of the mind. It arises from a calm of the heart that cannot be obtained through knowledge or status. In stillness, one remembers true freedom. That freedom is never lost, regardless of the situation. Zen is like a key that gently opens the door to that freedom. Among the influences of Zen on great figures, one of the most important is the ability to view oneself objectively. Everyone is unknowingly governed by their own values and emotions. However, Zen teaches us how to distance ourselves from that control. It encourages us to perceive thoughts and emotions not as ourselves, but as phenomena flowing before us. Harari repeatedly honed this sense through meditation. As a result, he was able to maintain a calm perspective when discussing history, unaffected by personal emotions. Objectivity is cultivated through training, not talent. Jobs was thorough in always revisiting from the user's perspective when looking at products. He based his judgment not on whether he liked it, but on whether the world needed it. This attitude of letting go of the ego deeply resonates with Zen's teaching of no self. The Dalai Lama always maintained a mindset of being an observer to avoid becoming too attached to his emotions and thoughts. This observational stance calmed anger and attachment, deepening compassion. Zen serves as a mirror that corrects the habits of the mind. When the mirror is cloudy, it cannot reflect our true selves accurately. However, when the mirror is clear, we can accept reality as it is. Objectivity is a power that is born only when we polish the mirror of the mind. Great figures were well aware that false assumptions could lead to significant failures. That is why they never neglected introspection and observation. Zen was the best training for deepening that introspection. When one can view oneself objectively, understanding others also deepens. Because one is not overwhelmed by their own emotions, they can quietly imagine the other's position. This attitude becomes the power to choose dialogue over conflict. Great figures understood the importance of dialogue well. Dialogue can only exist when both empathy and objectivity are present. Zen nurtures both of these powers simultaneously. Objectivity creates sharpness, while compassion brings warmth. It is because of both that the words and actions of great figures were persuasive. Another core lesson that Zen has shown to great figures is the ability to distinguish between what can and cannot be controlled. Much of our suffering begins when we try to change things we cannot control. Others' emotions, past events, and the state of the world. These cannot be changed no matter how hard we try. However, Zen gives us the courage not to cling to what cannot be changed. This courage is not resignation, but wisdom. Jobs excelled at calmly discerning what he could and could not do. While he couldn't control the market, he could control the quality and experience of his products. Focusing on that point led to innovation. When Harari speaks about the future of human society, he never makes predictions. Predictions deal with areas that cannot be controlled. What he speaks of is only the future we can choose. The Dalai Lama, even when faced with political pressure and national issues, calmly said, "Even if external circumstances do not change, our mindset can." The spirit of Zen supported these words. What we can truly control is only our consciousness and actions. When we realize this, our hearts feel a great release. We no longer have to suffer over what cannot be changed. Zen gently shifts the focus of life from the outside to the inside. This change does not weaken a person, rather, it strengthens them. There is nothing stronger than a heart that is not swayed by external circumstances. Great figures cultivated this strength over a long time. Jobs continued to look in the same direction, whether criticized or praised. Harari did not let go of his calm perspective, even when the world was in chaos. The Dalai Lama continued to choose compassion, even in suffering. Strength is not about not being defeated by external circumstances. Strength is about continuing to protect the center of the heart. Zen was the path to find, nurture, and protect this center. And this path is open to anyone, transcending time and culture. Great figures knew that beyond this path lies a free way of living. One of the important insights that Zen has given to great figures is the truth that everything is in the process of change. When we cling to what does not change, our hearts become rigid. However, when we accept the ever-changing world as it is, our hearts return to flexibility. Jobs was not afraid of the constant changes in the world of technology. Rather, he believed that these changes were opportunities for creation. Harari demonstrated that history itself is a continuous change. He emphasized the importance of understanding this change rather than fearing it. The Dalai Lama has embraced change with compassion. Even when exiled from his country, he maintained his beliefs and kept his peace of mind. Zen does not resist what changes. It does not see change as evil, but accepts it as a natural flow. This attitude deeply influences human relationships. People change. Situations change. We ourselves also change. Understanding this obvious truth reduces unnecessary conflicts. Many conflicts arise from sadness or anger over the other person has changed. However, Zen teaches that this change is proof of life. Rejecting change increases suffering, while accepting it lightens the heart. Great figures deeply understood this structure. That is why, even in times of rapid change, they did not lose their quiet center. Jobs always welcomed the moment when old common sense was shattered. Harari remained calm when the world was shaken. The Dalai Lama quietly accepted people's anxieties and accompanied them through change. Zen is like a boat that does not sink even in the waves of change. While shaking is inevitable, not sinking is a choice. Zen teaches us this wisdom. And when we no longer fear change, we begin to feel true freedom. The reason great figures could ride the waves of significant eras was that they had this freedom. Another core lesson that Zen teaches great individuals is the attitude of living by choice, not reaction. We often act reflexively in many situations. We feel down when scolded, happy when praised, and anxious when we fail. All of these are states where the mind automatically reacts to external stimuli. Zen teaches us how to step back from these automatic reactions. We can learn to consciously choose rather than react. Jobs always observes situations quietly, trying to judge based on essence rather than emotions. He thoroughly maintained an attitude of living by choice, not being swayed by anger or excitement. Harari warns that when discussing history and civilization, humans are overreacting. Fear, desire, and impulse. Society becomes chaotic in response to these. That's why it's crucial for individuals to free themselves from reaction overload. The Dalai Lama does not choose to respond with anger, even when insulted. What he chooses is the choice of understanding and compassion. This calmness cannot be achieved without training. Zen was a practice to regain the subjectivity of choice. Simply focusing on breathing creates a small gap between reaction and action. That gap is where the freedom of choice resides. When we also gain this gap, the quality of our lives changes remarkably. We do not get angry just because we are told to. We do not feel anxious just because something happens. We do not feel down just because the future is uncertain. We can decide whether to choose that or not for ourselves. All great individuals understood the importance of living by choice, not reaction. The greater the power to choose, the more we can steer the course of our lives. Jobs sparked a revolution because there was a vision beyond choice. Harari could decipher the world because he continued to choose contemplation over reaction. The Dalai Lama continues to spread peace because he chooses compassion over anger. Zen is a technique to regain freedom from within, not from the outside. That freedom was the core that made great individuals great. One reason Zen has deeply influenced great figures is the truth that silence breeds creativity. Many people tend to think that creativity arises from stimulation. However, the great figures knew the opposite to be true. True creativity sprouts from a quiet mind. Jobs mentioned that the best ideas come when the mind is clear through meditation. Without distractions, the inner voice can be heard more clearly. Harari understood the structure of the world by cutting off information and embracing silence. When thinking in silence, thoughts gain depth and sharpness. The Dalai Lama always takes time to meditate when conveying messages of compassion and peace. A quiet mind brings forth gentle words. Zen values the time of nothingness. That time, which may seem empty, contains great potential. It is in the stillness of silence that the greatest power resides. If the water's surface is turbulent, the sky cannot be reflected. Only when the water calms can the colors of the sky and shapes of the clouds be beautifully mirrored. The same goes for the mind. It is in silence that the true self begins to emerge. And the creativity that lies dormant within also reveals itself. Great figures understood this mechanism through experience. They do not create something amidst busyness. It is in silence that ideas capable of changing the world grow. Zen has been a presence that prepares the soil for creativity. A person with a calm mind can grasp complex problems simply. When ideas are needed, it is crucial to hold a moment of pause without thinking. That pause is the space where inspiration is born. In modern times, information is constantly overflowing, and silence is often lost. However, Zen teaches us how to create silence in any situation. Silence is a stronger weapon than talent. Silence is a deeper power than chaos. And silence has supported the lives of great figures as the source of creativity. One of the great insights that Zen gave to great figures was the sense of knowing sufficiency. The more one seeks, the more anxious one becomes. No matter how much one gains, there is always a desire for more. This creates a cycle of suffering. Zen shows a quiet way to escape that cycle. Jobs chose to focus on what was truly necessary rather than chasing success. Fewer choices lead to deep concentration, and deep concentration leads to great results. Harari stated that material wealth does not satisfy the heart. What fills the heart is tranquility and understanding, not possession. The Dalai Lama never forgets to smile, even with little. He knows that happiness is not a condition, but a state of mind. Zen nurtures a heart that feels, "This is enough." With this feeling, there is no need to compare oneself to others. As comparisons decrease, the heart becomes remarkably light. Great figures were dignified because they were satisfied with themselves. Satisfaction is not stagnation, it is a source of deep confidence. With a heart that knows sufficiency, one becomes less anxious. When anxiety fades, judgment becomes accurate, and actions become beautiful. Zen gives us the courage to slow down the pace of life. While moving quickly can sometimes be wise, it is not always right. There are views that can only be seen by moving slowly. In product creation, Jobs never compromised on design out of impatience. Each meticulous detail created a beauty that captivated people worldwide. Harari chose not to be swept away by the speed of knowledge consumption in the information society. He knew that deep thinking requires time. The Dalai Lama speaks with calm breaths and answers any question slowly. This attitude quietly calms the hearts of those around him. Zen is a path of not rushing, not competing, and not comparing. This path leads to the free way of living chosen by great figures. One reason Zen attracted great figures is its perspective that transcends winning and losing. In modern society, things are often discussed in terms of success or failure, winning or losing. However, Zen quietly transcends this binary. It teaches us to remain humble in victory and not to sink in defeat, keeping our hearts centered. Jobs valued creating the right things over simply continuing to win. Harari avoided judging history in terms of good and evil, seeking to deeply understand the context of human actions. The Dalai Lama, even amidst political conflict, chose words that did not create enemies. For him, conflict was not about winning, but an entry point for deepening understanding. Zen reminds us of a world where winning is not necessary. When the obsession with winning and losing fades, the heart becomes free. A free heart allows for richer choices. If you cling to winning, you wear yourself thin and narrow your perspective. However, standing outside of winning and losing expands the landscape of life. Great figures viewed things from this expanded perspective. They looked at the larger flow rather than small competitions. They focused on long-term value rather than short-term results. They considered the future of society as a whole, not just their own interests. These perspectives are deeply connected to the spirit of Zen. Zen emphasizes actions in this moment over results. This reflects an attitude that values growth over winning and losing. Jobs pursued the path he believed in, regardless of the outcome. This consistency shaped Apple's culture. Harari narrates what humans have chosen and repeated throughout history. There lies deep observation, not the logic of winners. The Dalai Lama, even in the midst of conflict, chose to remember compassion, prioritizing understanding each other over winning. A way of life that transcends winning and losing brings tranquility to the heart. This tranquility gave great figures deep, persuasive power in their decisions and words. Zen liberates life from the game of winning and losing, providing a broader perspective. This perspective became the force that moved the world for great figures. Another important point that Zen teaches great people is the ability to make friends with uncertainty. In life, there are far more unpredictable events than predictable ones. The reality is that the future is unseen by anyone, and efforts do not guarantee results. This uncertainty can be a significant source of anxiety for many people. However, Zen teaches us not to fear uncertainty, but to accept it as it is. Jobs trusted his intuition and moved forward even in situations without guarantees for the future. His famous words, "Dots will connect later," embody a way of life that makes uncertainty an ally. Harari speaks of possibilities for the future rather than predicting it. He teaches that because the future is not certain, humanity has choices and hope. The Dalai Lama maintained inner peace regardless of how unstable the situation was. For him, uncertainty was not fear, but part of learning. Zen focuses on the action being taken now rather than the results. This attitude cultivates the ability to concentrate on the present step without being dragged by anxiety. In uncertainty, mental stability is essential. Great people achieve this stability through Zen practice. Because we do not know what the future holds, we live the present carefully. Because the future is unseen, we choose the best we can do now. Because the future is uncertain, our mindset influences everything. Zen serves as a mental anchor to remain steady in an unstable world. Those with that anchor can take on greater challenges. Jobs opened new markets even amidst uncertainty. Harari continued necessary discussions without fearing future chaos. The Dalai Lama continued to spread words of compassion even in situations where hope was not visible. Zen nurtures the courage to move forward without fear in an uncertain world. That courage was the great power that made great people great. One of the deepest wisdoms that Zen taught great figures is to align your relationship with yourself. Many people are either too hard on themselves or, conversely, have too high expectations. Both ways burden the heart and lead to a heavy life. Zen aims to see oneself just as one is, without blaming or embellishing. This attitude serves as a foundation for building a healthy relationship with oneself. Jobs placed great importance on being honest with himself. He knew that compromising clouds the mind and that cloudiness hampers creativity. Harari deepened his sense that thoughts are not oneself through meditation. This realization helped avoid both overestimating and underestimating oneself. The Dalai Lama teaches that cherishing oneself leads to the ability to cherish others. Those who dislike themselves cannot be kind to others. Zen practice helps align one's distance from oneself and cultivates a habit of treating the heart gently. Sometimes we become our own harshest judges. Unable to forgive past failures and chased by future anxieties, we hurt our hearts. However, Zen alleviates that suffering by giving space to the heart. Space allows for deeper breathing, calming thoughts, and loosening emotions. Great figures understood the importance of this space well. Those with space can be calmer, more creative, and kinder. When we only criticize ourselves, our perspective narrows and options close off. But when we accept ourselves as we are, our hearts soften and possibilities expand. Zen seeks not perfection but alignment. A balanced heart is beautiful, even if not perfect. This was also the way great figures demonstrated in their lives. When the relationship with oneself is aligned, the relationship with the surrounding world naturally aligns too. Zen teaches that the beginning is to see oneself well. And that act of looking is the first step of all growth. Another important wisdom that Zen has shown to great figures is the attitude of not rushing to judgment. In our daily lives, we often make quick judgments about many things. Whether we like or dislike, whether it's right or wrong, whether we gain or lose. However, this instant judgment can sometimes lead to significant misunderstandings and stress. Zen encourages us to take a moment to simply observe before making judgments. That moment is the key to regaining clarity of mind. Jobs took his time with important decisions. He knew that true answers cannot be seen amidst impulse and haste. Harari made an effort to deeply understand the background and structure of world events instead of evaluating them immediately. This attitude lends credibility to his insights. The Dalai Lama speaks of focusing on breathing when anger arises. By returning to breath, the waves of the mind calm down, allowing kindness to return. A hurried mind is bound by past habits. A mind that observes slowly can judge from the present self. Zen is a practice to cultivate this present perspective. Judgments made from the present perspective tend to have surprisingly fewer mistakes. Great figures understood that this calmness deeply influences both work and life. The more we rush, the less we see. The slower we go, the more we see. That is the world Zen reveals. We too need to take a breath when we are in a hurry. That one breath can even change the direction of our lives. The attitude of not rushing to judgment brings significant changes to relationships. We can learn to receive others' words without immediately denying them, creating space in our hearts. With space, understanding arises and conflicts decrease. Zen is also a practice of creating space in the heart. Those who have a wide space become softer, gentler, and deeper individuals. Great figures provided a sense of security to those around them because they had this wide space. Space is not a talent, it can be cultivated. And the method of cultivating it is at the heart of Zen practice. One of the profound wisdoms that Zen has imparted to great figures is the idea of seeing oneself through the mirror of others. We experience emotions like anger, joy, jealousy, and gratitude in our interactions with others. However, Zen believes that many of these emotions are not born from the other person, but are rather reactions from within ourselves. This perspective can significantly change our relationships. Jobs sometimes moved people with harsh words, but he also had the habit of deeply observing his own reactions. He never lost the attitude of exploring where his anger came from or what triggered his anxiety. Harari speaks throughout history about how people see their own shadows in others. This means that the emotions we feel towards others reflect something within ourselves. The Dalai Lama sometimes refers to even those who direct hostility at him as teachers. This is because they teach him where in his heart he is reacting. Zen reinterprets conflicts in human relationships as learning opportunities. When we encounter someone unpleasant, it is also a chance to notice something hidden within ourselves. Feeling irritated by someone is not their fault. It is because our own hearts are shaken. Feeling envious of someone can also be a trigger to reflect on what we are seeking. Great figures deeply understood this idea that people are mirrors. That is why they did not react extremely to hostility or criticism. Jobs sometimes found design direction from emotions born out of conflict. When analyzing historical conflicts, Harari always delved into the psychological causes within humans. The Dalai Lama sees those who direct anger at him as entrances to deeper understanding. The perspective that Zen teaches is not to avoid conflict, but to understand its essence. As understanding deepens, conflicts decrease and dialogue increases. Instead of blaming others, we look within ourselves. This attitude brings about significant changes in the heart. The reason great figures could build mature relationships is that they had the habit of exploring their inner selves. By organizing the inner self, the outer world naturally aligns. Zen is a path that changes the world, not by changing others, but by organizing one's own heart. And this path can be started by anyone. The last great realization that Zen gave to great figures was the perspective that living itself is a practice. Even without special places or times, everyday life provides opportunities to refine the mind. Walking, eating, working, talking. All of these become practices of being aware of here and now. Jobs relentlessly pursued beauty in the everyday. He infused even the most casual actions and first impressions with his heart. For him, refining beauty was the essence of Zen practice. Harari continued to meditate while traveling the world. He cultivated the strength to center his mind in any environment. The Dalai Lama welcomes everyone he meets as an object of compassion. This attitude deeply resonates with the Zen spirit of living each moment with care. The core of Zen teachings is that there's no need to be special. Rather, how we live the ordinary, non-special days is the key to refining the heart. Great figures valued the state of the heart more than any success. When the heart is centered, actions align and results follow. Conversely, if the heart is disturbed, actions become chaotic and results falter. Zen confronts not the outside, but the inside. As we cultivate inner calm, the outer world quietly transforms as well. We too can incorporate Zen into our daily lives. A breath in the morning, the sound of footsteps while walking, a bite of food, the pause in conversations with others. These small moments accumulate, changing the quality of the heart. Zen is not a complex theory. It's a simple way to regain tranquility in life. The reason great figures were drawn to Zen is not that they were special. It's because they sought to deeply understand the human heart. The quiet light of Zen illuminated the path of that understanding. Even in today's world, that light continues to guide us. When lost, tired, or anxious, take a breath and gently observe your heart. From there, a new step begins. Zen is the quietest and most powerful path that supports that step.